Excellent. So we are live. We're going live right now. I am Christopher Balzano. Welcome to Tripping on Legends Live. I'm still trying to adjust here. I'm not used to this setup. I haven't done a solo video here at Tripping on Legends Live, or Tripping on Legends North, as we call it. Natalie's house is south. This is north, and I am by myself. So if you see anything creepy coming down that hall right there, please let me know, and I will make sure to I'll make sure that it's not. Now the lighting is really, really bad, so I'm going to try some things here to make it a little bit better. That's a little bit better. Only I am looking like, there we go, maybe like this tonight. My name is Christopher Balzano. Natalie, like I said, is not with me tonight, so I'm going to be flying solo on this. But I am hoping that Natalie will appear kind of in one form or another. If you notice in the comments, or at least in the comment shows or show comments, I have put in all the different information to contact us. So we're talking tonight about Fort Desoto 1 year later. And it was kind of an important turning stone in Tripping on Legends, and an important time in, or kind of moment for us as a team, for us as Legend Trippers. And so when it popped up today, I really wanted to do something to remember it, because I've done a ton of library shows since then, and this always seems to pop up as the legend trip that nearly ended the show. And I'm not sure if it was all a matter of timing and that led to it, or what was experienced there, but it was kind of a combination of all of them. And it was also a combination of a mixture of what we were as investigators, what we were as a team together. And so it was worth exploring, because I think that there are moments in the paranormal that shift the way that you think about it. You know what? I'm taking the hat off. My hair's a mess, but I'm taking the hat off. There's a moment that shifts the way that you think about the paranormal. And it shifts the way that you think about the paranormal and your place in it, and what it is and what we do. And that was an important moment for us, and it happened a year ago. And what I have right now is, in addition to the comments here in the video, I also have the phone number up there, which is 813-418-6822. It's listed in the comments. I'll post it kind of as we go as well. Like I said, I'm flying solo tonight. But if you want to either call or just message your moment that flipped the paranormal on its ear for you, that moment where what you had thought about the paranormal shifted, turned. Now that can be a good turn or a bad turn. It's just something where it's like you're on a straight path, you think you understand what's going on, and all of a sudden something comes that just kind of completely evaluate the paranormal. And that can be a case that you were on, it can be something you experienced, it can be something that you were told. And so feel free to do any of that. I'm getting weird messages on here, so I just want to stay on this page. I just want to make sure that I'm getting everything done here, because all these things are like popping up, of course, because tonight I'm alone. Just really quickly to go through the stuff that is in the show description, and so you can kind of invent, or you can kind of explore some of these things. In there I have the actual Fort Desoto episode, so you can kind of hear our initial episode. And actually, I believe the one that's in there is when we came back. So there's an episode that's right before there where we kind of talk about going, and then the episode that's posted in the show notes is the actual episode when we come back. Also in there is Rebecca Genesis's Ghost Seer page. That was kind of crucial in our research, and I always want to put a hand out to those who come before us and help us form our opinions on things and doing good research. I also have some of the YouTube videos that were taken at Fort Desoto. They're kind of an interesting watch. I have our Legend Tripping on Legends website in there, as well as the Twitter account. I'm not sure. Nope, I didn't put the Instagram, but you can find us on Instagram. And the other thing I put in was the YouTube link. So we haven't been doing a lot with YouTube, and by we haven't been getting a lot of traffic there. We would really love to get youtube.com/Tripping on Legends. Like, we want that name. We need 100 people. We have 51 right now. So if you're watching this video on a platform where you can click, please click the link and go and subscribe to our page so that we can get that 100, so we can get off of this really long address. And it forces us to put more stuff on there. We have everything we put on, we've put on there as a few, in addition to some other things and some lists of, like, when we go on a legend, I generally post like a whole bunch of like other videos that are on there, so you can kind of research it. So it's worth definitely going into it. Now, the issue I'm having right now, which I never have when Natalie's here because she's there, is I can't see comments. So I'm dying to see these comments, and I cannot. So I'm trying to, if someone can just kind of message and say that they hear me, and so I can actually see a comment, because I see joins, but I'm not sure if I can see any comments. And I see some people have already, I think, commented. So if you can do that for me, I would appreciate that. Like I said, flying solo, I can do it with my phone over here, but it's not nearly as cool that way. And, you know, what are you going to do? So that's kind of like just to set up what's going on. If you're watching this live, I just got this through. So if you're watching this live, tonight you can tune into Midnight in the Desert, and Tim Weisberg will be hosting. So wherever you get Midnight in the Desert, you can go to Tim Weisberg's page and kind of click on that. I'll probably also be posting it after the show. It looks like tonight he is going to be on Midnight in the Desert. We always want to support everything Tim does because Tim's pretty amazing. All right, so with all of that said, and what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to myself and see if the video is on. Does it show it on? It doesn't show it on. I don't know what's going on. This is weird because usually when I do this, I can actually see them as we go, but I'm having trouble. All right, so let's see this works. There we go. Now I can see them. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Mark. There was a little thing on my computer, but now I'm good. All right, so Fort Desoto. If you're unfamiliar with the location itself, like you haven't listened to either of the episodes, I'll give you like a quick rundown on what was going on there. Fort Desoto is a fort built in Tampa Bay or near Tampa Bay that was initially built to reinforce another fort that was there. So it's, in some ways, it's kind of like Fort Inconsequential. Never fired its gun during a battle or anything like that, only fired in terms of practice. But for a while, it was a quarantine for yellow fever. So anytime you get a disease like yellow fever, you're going to get a lot of tragedy, you're going to get a lot of death, you're going to get a lot of grief, you're going to get a lot of energy that can stay in an area, especially because you have these terms of long suffering, you know? So there's two things that they say spark a lot of paranormal activity. One is a sudden death, and the other is a long, agonizing death. But we didn't know about that. When we first did this, we were reading the Tampa Triangle, and we were enthralled by this ghost that was there, who was the ghost of a dead fisherman. And this dead fisherman was supposed to hit on people as they, young ladies, as they fished by themselves, especially like as the sun was beginning to set. So we had this really great idea at the time to put Natalie out there on the ocean, or on the Gulf at least, and see if she could pick up a ghost fisherman. We made a fake Tinder profile that sounded a lot like we wanted company as a couple. Those people who were followers of the show got the joke because all of the little references in there were up to other shows. Other people, not so much. I've gotten into a lot of trouble in the last year for having that picture up, and people are like, what exactly is going on? My students have found it. So I guess one of the legacies of Fort Desoto is, you know, my students all think I'm. Anyway, so in doing research and finding Rebecca Genesis' page, we actually ended up finding about another less fun Less fun ghost. And that were the ghosts that were actually at the fort. So the fisherman was supposed to be outside in different areas in it. He supposedly worked at one of the stores that was in Fort Desoto. But we found out about these sadder ghosts, these more mournful spirits that might be there. And the one that really connected to us, because we were into backstory, was that of a mother. And the story went that different parts of the fort were set off for different levels of yellow fever, right? So if you had one kind of stage of it, you were in one place. If you had one stage, you were another. And the story goes, which in retrospect doesn't make a lot of sense, but it will in terms of the bigger story. There was a mother who was sick, and her children were sick, and some of her children were more sick, and she was less sick, and so she was staying with her less sick child, and the other kids were by themselves, and those other kids died. And the mother did not get to be there when those children passed. And so her spirit is said to still walk the remains of Fort Desoto looking for her children. So she's unable to find her children in death. As a backstory, that's very powerful, right? And one of the episodes that we're still going to do of a live show, probably in 2 or 3 weeks, is paranormal parents, and how those relationships in the paranormal, like a ghost story that involves mother, father, children, is more compelling, or how it is compelling, but also how being a parent impacts the way that you look at the paranormal. This kind of touches upon that. Whenever you hear a story like that, it immediately grabs you by the throat, grabs you by the heart, because you understand, even if you're not a parent, you understand that idea that you would die for your children. And so you would also probably live after death for your children. You would be unable to break that bond, and therefore you would be trapped because of what had happened to your children and what you were unable to stop. And so that backstory made sense to us. And it made sense to us as both like a potential for a ghost to be there, but then also, as we do on Tripping on Legends, it makes sense that that's the story that people, if they saw this lonely woman walking the fort, they would make up that backstory. They would make up that story because it could relate to people. There's no one who would say, no, that doesn't make any sense. It's unprovable, because going through the records there would be very difficult. But it is definitely a situation where that compelling narrative is enough to drive the story forward. So whether it's real or it's not real, someone saw something, someone sees something, and this is the story they've attached to it. If you ask Natalie, and I see that Natalie's here now, or if you ask Guy, there's no doubt that the mother is there. And that is heartbreaking. So we went there, and I would say overall the trip was difficult. We went and we did the fisherman. We didn't do the fisherman because he didn't show up, but we did that part of the legend. So Natalie kind of was fishing, and it was very kind of, I'm not sure what her perspective on it, but it was very light, and it was very kind of like adventurous and kind of silly. And like I said, we made up the fake profile and everything, and that we were promoting it as like, watch Natalie get, hook up with somebody. And so it was this kind of interesting thing. And then in the back of our minds, we had this other story, right? But we really were kind of driving with the fisherman angle on it. While Natalie was doing that, I went to the barricades, the battery, like where they kept the weapons. And I did some EVPs, and it was if you've ever been to Fort Desoto, you know what I'm talking about. It's a haunted place. There were footsteps. There was coughing. Now, it's a very difficult place if you're an investigator, because you are looking at places that create a lot of echo. You're looking at places that echo the outside, the inside. You're on the water, so anything that's going on there is going to impact it. You are actually also looking at there are pipes that run up, air pipes that run up to the top. So anyone who's at the top, you're going to hear, or an airplane. So there's a lot of things that an investigator would have a really difficult time. Fortunately, we are not investigators, and so we can kind of push some of that aside and just kind of live in the moment. And the vibe that I was getting when I was there was, it was creepy. I mean, I've been in some weird places. I've been in Fort Adams, which a lot of it is underground. This place definitely had a more eerie feel to it than those places did. And I was none all too happy to get out of there myself and meet back up with Natalie. So we explored some of that again, and you can see those videos. But then we got to the fort, or we started exploring the grounds. Now, the problem with it, there's a lot of different stories that happen there, supposedly. And on the grounds, there are pretty much just the remains or the foundations of buildings. And those foundations, it's kind of unclear what is where. And then we were looking for the biggest part of the hospital, or the biggest part of the quarantine, which looked like it was in the water by the map, but we couldn't find it. And then we ended up, it was on the other side of it, all this stuff. But we did find the hospital, or the foundation of the hospital. Now, this hospital, in addition to being the place where some of these victims were housed, also was the place where the bodies were laid after one of the great tragedies on the Skyway Bridge. So the Skyway Bridge collapsed. They brought the bodies to this hospital to store while they were waiting for them to be picked up by the different towns that these people were from. And I went off exploring. Natalie stayed. And if you've listened to any of our episodes, Natalie's EVP sessions are her talking, her just trying to communicate. And that's been her way since the beginning. This is where he pauses. This is normally where I would have Natalie say something, but I got to take a drink. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. She got a feeling. She got kind of an uneasy feeling. We left. On the way, either back to the hotel, because we were staying in Tampa that night, I believe, if I remember correctly, because we came back the next day, yeah, we did. We stayed. Or the next day in the morning, whatever it was, we listened to some of that audio. The most disturbing thing that we got on there was Natalie is talking to the mother. And she says something to the effect of, that sucks. Like, in terms of like talking about losing your kids, like, that sucks. I know what that's like. That was kind of like the push of what she said. The reason why I don't know is because I haven't listened to the audio in a while. And a voice responded, no, you don't. Now, when we heard that, that's kind of when things changed. Especially given the tone that we were at, right? Or the tone we were in, the mood that we were in. We had just come from this kind of playful, can we get a ghost to flirt with Natalie, to maybe not fully respecting the situation that we were in on the grounds of this hospital where many people died. To hear that broke both of our hearts, broke Natalie's heart, was impactful for me as well, because the paranormal changed then. And the paranormal went from being something that you were maybe separated from. There was a metaphysical distance. There was a spiritual distance. There was a folklore-based distance between the ghosts of the paranormal, the ghosts of a location, and where you were, right? People get EVPs all the time. These EVPs can respond to what you're saying even. Sometimes you're catching just a recording or even a snippet of conversation between people. Other times it's a direct response that you ask a question, they give an answer. This was a moment of grief. And it's easy to say that ghosts are real. If you've had experiences, you feel that ghosts are real. You might not be able to understand them, but you understand that the world of the paranormal is a real world, right? We live in it. We experience ghosts. We have moments that we can't explain. This is different. This is talking to someone, and it's no longer a theoretical thing. It's no longer distance from you. This is a conversation with someone who is telling you that there's no way you can possibly imagine how sad they are. It's no longer the material for websites. It's no longer the material for campfire stories. There is that moment when you're experiencing that, when it is someone telling you something in confidence. And someone saying something to you the way you would tell a friend that you felt something. You wouldn't then go and do a show about it, And I think part of that happened in that moment when we heard it. Our mouths dropped. And I think part of it kind of gestated over the course of the next 2 weeks. I'm going to read Natalie's comment. She wrote, definitely the moment I realized really how alive ghosts can be, how they can still feel emotions, how they can express those emotions. Right. This was a conversation. This was someone reaching out, and it impacted her greatly. And I think, I don't want to say it put a damper on it, but I think there was a different tone to the rest of the weekend after we had that. We went back to the site. Neither of us, I feel, kind of wanted to be there. Natalie, you can back me up on this, or I kind of felt like we were done. We went and we tried to find that mound. And the next, I can't remember what it was, but on my birthday, which is this week, on my birthday, that week, I tried to do a live show, and all the power went out. It got blown out. My dryer got destroyed. I mean, it was like a really, really weird time. The paranormal was. Now I live in Southwest Florida. The power could go out like now, right? But this felt like something forced, and I don't know if I was making. Minnows into whales, as we say, but there was definitely something that felt off on the paranormal. And I also feel like if there was something that felt off with Natalie and I as Legend Trippers, as a team. And it was just a really, really weird time. And that was confirmed to some degree that weekend, the next weekend, when I was going through the rest of the audio that we got. And our intention was, and we had talked about it, was doing a follow-up show with the EVPs. We were going to include that EVP, and then we were going to include some of the other stuff. And this part has never been. We never made that show. We never made the follow-up show, and we had to kind of kill it. Now I'm going to pick this up right now because I think it might be someone actually kind of calling in. So we're going to try. Hello?
Mark Muncie.
Hello?
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Mark?
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Hello?
Hey, how are you, sir?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Good. Didn't want to interrupt too much, but before I passed out for the evening, I was going to tell where I turned, if you have a moment.
I would love to hear that. And if people can actually respond whether or not they can hear Mark as he's talking, that would be amazing. And Mark, just if it doesn't get on audio, then at least you've told me and I can reiterate it and steal it, potentially.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So this is Mark Muncy. Mark, before you start, tell the names of your books.
I am the author of Erie, Florida and Freaky Florida, and the forthcoming sequel, Creepy Florida, from History Press.
Excellent. Okay.
I ran a haunted house for 20 years, and we based it on local lore and legends. And that was because of a particular incident, and that's what I'm going to discuss.
Excellent. Natalie says hello, by the way, Mark. You're loud and clear, she says. So go ahead.
Okay, great. In the early days of exploring Florida with my family, my youngest daughter and I were on a ghost tour in St. Augustine, one of the early days, and we were there with the sheriff's ghost walk, who's still there and still the best ghost tour for the money out there, especially if you're into history. And that was just it. I was kind of a history buff, just being a nerd. I love Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. So learning some Florida history at the time, but I didn't know it very well. And we were in St. Augustine. My youngest daughter was like 5, and we were with this ghost tour. And my then wife and oldest daughter were elsewhere, and we were on this ghost tour. And he was talking about we were at the Huguenot Cemetery, about to walk back through the city gates and down St. George's Street where we had started. And he hadn't talked about them yet. And I was a little tired. It was a late night, and so I ran over to sit at the city gates, and my daughter was running around playing. And I was kind of listening to him talk about Huguenot Cemetery and I think it was the ghost of Judge Stickney over there. And I was just kind of half listening to him and keeping an eye on my daughter. And my daughter comes running up to me, and she says, Dad, my friend over here says we have to be careful of Jack. And I was like, who's Jack? She said, I don't know. She said, we got to watch out for him because he's dangerous. And I was like, oh, where's your friend? She's like, oh, over there. And I thought she bumped into some other kid or something. It's kind of late in St. Augustine, but there's still a lot of tourists around.
Right.
So I didn't think anything of it. And then, the sheriff finishes telling Huguenot, starts walking over to the city gates, and he starts talking about the gatekeeper at the city gates who, when yellow fever hit and killed everybody, and how they were burying people right here just outside the gates. And they don't really know how many dead bodies are underneath the ground we're standing on and all this. And how when he died, his daughter, a young girl, stayed and warned people about yellow fever as well for a few weeks after he died, before she died of yellow fever. And her ghost was still seen at the gates. And I started putting two and two together. And I looked over at my daughter, and I said, she said to be careful of Jack, right? This friend of yours. And she said, yeah. She said, Jack, Yellow Jack. And I had never put it together.
Right.
And I looked up at the sheriff and said, hey, what did they call yellow fever? They didn't call it yellow fever back then. He's like, no, they called it Yellow Jack. And suddenly history was there in my face.
Right.
As well as paranormal. And I had never put history and paranormal together. Here I was thinking, the study of ghosts and stuff, parapsychology, it's anthropology and parapsychology combined. And that's when it flipped for me that suddenly I had to have a knowledge of history while also looking into ghost stories for our haunted house.
Right, and
that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going, man.
That's my daughter's earliest memory.
She still remembers that. She still remembers it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, she was like 5 or 6. That's her earliest memory.
My word. Have you shared that in a book yet? Because if not, I'm stealing it.
It's in the new book, actually.
Oh, it's okay. You're gonna get that out before I get mine out. So, but then what's really interesting there is the idea of once again, like I was saying, like ghosts can be theoretical. They can be something on the corner of your eye. But here's an exchange that you're able to like take a step back and say, this was a direct communication, and it was important to that person, and they were reaching out.
Yeah. I mean, even if you consider it, like we discussed this, kind of like UFOs, where there's different degrees of UFO encounters. There's different degrees of hauntings. Some are just replays, and that could still be a replay, but it was reaching out to Callie, my daughter.
Right.
And then, like I said, it was, definitely had an important message for her.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, it's one of those. But have a great show, and I'm sorry I missed you at Fort Desoto.
No problem at all.
My neck of the woods. So.
Mark will connect. Thank you very much for calling in. That's Mark Muncy. Have a wonderful night, man.
All right, you too, man. Enjoy the show.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye. We had our first call. And what an amazing first call, Mark Muncy. And that's a really good example of what do you do after that? Like, you can't experience the paranormal. Now that, while weird and freaky, and like Mark said, that changed his perspective on, now he understood the connection between history and the paranormal, and how those two things had to play with each other. And overall, it seemed like it was a fairly positive experience for them, however odd or weird it might have been. If you can, once again, call in with your experience that shifted the way that you thought about the paranormal. Our number, if you want to call in, is 813-418-6822. And that was a really incredible experience. And, this is, I think, what we struggled with after that. When you are reaching an emotional peak like that, does it then become exploitive to tell that story? Does it become sharing someone's secret? Does it become sensationalizing the grief of someone? Right? You're talking about the sadness of whatever spirits might be left in the Amityville house of the dead bodies, or Lizzie Borden, right? These things happened in the past. Or even if you're doing a graveyard tour and you're talking about the historical people that are there and how their ghosts are, something like we did in Indian Springs, and it's pushed, right? It's pushed, and even though this yellow fever experience, much like Mark's yellow fever experience in St. Augustine, it's there, right? It's history. It's history coming alive. It's theoretical. It's okay to talk about those things, right? And it's okay to talk about something where some people see a spirit or they see a ghost walking along this lane all the time, because once again, most of the time it's something else going on that people are attributing a story to. But to be there in a moment where someone was reaching out with their sadness in a direct communication. This ghost didn't say, "I'm sad." This ghost said, "No, you don't understand." Was it then exploitive? Right? Is what we do at all like exploitive? Like, is all of it? We're taking people who potentially could be trapped, right? Who are maybe reliving their saddest moment, and we're just replaying it, and we're putting it out there, and we're packaging it, and we are selling it, right? Like, no, ain't no one paying for this podcast, but we're doing it as something else, right? We're promoting ourselves. I'm promoting my book. Is it then exploitive? I'm gonna. I've experienced it here and other places. This is Steve in the chat room, but don't share it because people think I'm crazy. And I think, Steve, you can feel free to share with us. This is a safe place for you anytime you want to share your experiences, anytime you want to call me on this number or my private number, which I can give you, or share with me. I don't think you're crazy. I mean, I think you are crazy, but not crazy because of that. And so finding a community, and hopefully in stumbling upon us because of our old friendship, you found maybe a place where you can talk about that stuff. Feel free to share as much as you want, whenever you want. like I was saying in the story, I'm evaluating the really tough week. My birthday's always tough. That night, everything goes down. That weekend, I'm looking at the evidence, looking at the enormous amount of flies, which are still here tonight. And the conversations that were going on in the battery, in the armory, I'm not going to get into specifics, but the EVPs that we got there were some of the clearest I've ever gotten. And they were not, from the moment we got there, not happy that we were there, not engaging us in a positive way. This is both when I was there by myself and then when Natalie came with me afterwards. Not joyful, but rather alternated between sad and sadness and anger at us for even being there. Go away. We didn't get the infamous "get out" EVP, but what we did get were, and Natalie doesn't even know these, a lot of voices and a lot of different expressions of, why are you here? Like, what are you doing here? Like, go. Like, why would you stay? Go. That kind of thing. Like I said, Natalie's never heard them. I stopped after about an hour of collecting them after I had at least 15, 20. And we both knew that there was no way we were going to do a follow-up show. And unlike the pants episode, which we were kind of encouraged to not promote, we still promoted it because it was an experience and we were out there. But the episode itself took a more somber tone. And I think after that, we really questioned whether or not we were going to continue with this. We had planned summer. We had planned a whole bunch of stuff, which we ended up doing. Spoilers, we didn't end the show. But I think we both took a step back from it. And I think it took us a while to come to a positive conclusion to that. The positive conclusion to it is this. Tripping on Legends is about history, like Mark was saying. It's about anthropology, like he was saying. It's about sociology. It's about a story, an urban legend, a folktale, a ghost story. It's about a real experience from someone who is past, someone who's dead, being used to tell a bigger picture. And with respect, and we've always used the word intent, right? We've always said we do the, how do you protect yourself? People say all the time. We say our number one defense is intention. We do it with good hearts. Those people need a voice as well. And when you take a step back and you say, well, what does that mother deserve? We're not making T-shirts that say, no, you don't know, right? Or, I argued with the woman at the hospital, or, I don't think we're being exploitive, is what it comes down to. I don't think that the way we've approached it even since then, we can throw gimmicks out. We made a love potion and tried to like conjure a witch using a love potion and Bon Jovi. But I think that was used to tell the story of that town, right? And that was used to tell the story of our relationship with Native Americans, and continues to evolve, right? As we look more into that location, look more into Florida. I think that we've done a really good job in the last year of bringing those stories that we've explored, and even going back at some and giving them context. And I think that doesn't exploit, that celebrates. Rita, I'm going to share what you're saying right now. Rita says, in our first apartment, my daughter caught the reflection in the window of a little girl who was dying in a fire in our house. It was very distressing, and I even saw her. We cried with her. All I found out about our house was that it used to be a single-family house, but nothing about it burning, and it was very old. Thank you, Rita, for sharing that. Colleen, welcome to the show. That, I think, is a really good example of, I think part of this is, and we can get fancy, right? We can get fancy and we can say, I'm a folklorist, I'm an analytical folklorist. But the fact of the matter is that when we've experienced something, and not to make too serious of what Steve was saying, because we try to never get too serious here. There's a reason why the Bridgewater Triangle became popular. There's a reason why puck wedgies became popular. There's a reason why the paranormal in general exploded with the rise of the internet. And that's that people have had these experiences. People have had moments that they can't understand. And for years, they either thought they were crazy or they didn't have the vocabulary to explain this. And ghost stories, urban legends, and then the internet as a collector of these things became that place. So, part of the reason why we find the need to share this is we need to connect. We need to understand. We need to connect. And we're talking about something where you cannot understand. There are no answers to these questions, but the least we can do is ask them together. And I think Tripping on Legends has had a different heart since then. I think that we've taken maybe a little bit of a different approach, and we've taken a step back. We're not serious all the time, right? We're not, wearing black T-shirts and being somber. Like, we're still celebrating what we're doing, going out there. We're still being silly when we talk about it. But I think especially out in those places, we've approached them with much more reverence, and our job is, we're not investigators and we're not looking to explain. What we're looking to do is present. And by presenting it, we offer others a place of understanding. And we are allowed to let you have some reprieve from what you're feeling and then maybe the tension you have with it and the confusion you have with it, and be like, hey, listen, guess what? Whole bunch of other people across the country experience the same thing. You know what they're saying about it? They're saying it's this. Once again, anyone who wants to share, either in the chat room or at our phone number 813-418-6822, and want to share your experience that shifted your understanding of the paranormal. Like I said, from then on, we weren't sure we were going to do the show. I think it took a little while, and I think it especially impacted Natalie being a mother and also being the one person that she's talking to. It's okay if that's happening. If someone is being touched across the room by an unseen hand, they're going to have more of an impact on it than you are, right? And so now imagine if it's your heart being touched from across the room. They're going to have more of an impact. So definitely hit Natalie, especially because she's so much more emotional and empathetic. I don't even know what that word would be. She's more of an empath and more empathic. So it would have a more of an experience on her, would have more of an impact on her. And we've gone to libraries and we've told the story of it, because I think the story of us shifting is also one that needs to be told. And invariably it leads to someone saying, well, can I hear those EVPs? I want to hear those EVPs. And I'm like, you kind of missed the point. It reminds me of the story in The Things They Carried, where Tim O'Brien talks about telling the audience a story of a friend of his going so crazy emotionally that he's just shooting this pig, and he's using this pig as like target practice, and he's shooting his nose off, and then someone comes up afterwards and they say, I really felt bad for the pig in that story. And he's like, you just don't get it. And I understand that. Like, when we go to an event, people want to be spooked, they want to be creeped out, they want to be they're not looking for understanding as much as they're looking for entertainment, right? And so they almost always respond. Can we hear the EVP? And I always say, yeah. Stay afterwards, and I'll let you listen to it. Stay afterwards, and I'll let you listen to it. And I always make sure that I get very engaged with someone, and the people lose interest and they walk away. And so we don't really play that. And I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? I think I've put that out there before. Should we play those EVPs for people? There was some, I believe, on Brandy Stark, Dr. Brandy Stark's web page, the St. Petersburg Paranormal. I can't remember the name of it right now. There was some convo this week about Fort Desoto and what people had experienced on the North Shore of it and things like that. And, without thinking, I'm like, hey, I've got really good EVPs from there. And someone said, oh, can you share them with us? And I was like, ooh, I took a step back and I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to. No one's ever heard them except for me. In this house right here, literally in this exact chair that I'm sitting in was where I did it. And so I don't know if I would share those. I think that's not a story. I'm not sure. I'm putting it out to you guys. Is it exploitive? Is it go against kind of some moral code to be that impacted by that location, and then kind of go like, yeah, here's voices of dead people. They're really cool. Listen to them. So I put that out to you guys who are still kind of have I don't know, maybe a better mind than me, maybe a more critical mind than me. So that's kind of all I have for tonight. I wanted to address it. I wanted to say that, I've got a lot of exciting things planned. My perspective has shifted, but my focus has not necessarily. A year later, we can't do the show as often as we want to do. Life has a way of getting in the way of the afterlife. And so we press on and we do this in little places that we can, and hopefully you're enjoying them. But, it's going to be an interesting summer. That's all I can say. We're trying to get some things planned for a week-long legend trip, or at least like an extended one like we took 2 summers ago and like we got a little bit of last summer, but we'll see where we go with that. So before I leave, once again, you can call that number, 813-418-6822 at any time. And if I don't pick up, which I probably won't because I never pick up anything unless I know who it is, then you can kind of contact us. Also, the Fort Desoto episode, the Aftermath episode is listed in the postings, as well as Rebecca Genesis's website where she talks about it in a little more detail. Our website, trippingonlegends.wordpress.com, is in there. The Twitter, my Twitter, which is Spooky Balzano, is up there. Not Natalie's, which is the same thing, except for /Nene, my friend. But also, so like I said, our YouTube is up there, and we would love to start getting some nice action on our YouTube page so that we can get our domain name with it, and also so it encourages us to, when we go to a location, to post things not only about what we've done, but also collect some things and kind of make an archive, if you will, of the things that are associated with that other people have done. Colleen, before we go, Colleen said, I think it really depends on the EVP. Steve said not exploitive. Colleen says it depends on the EVP. If you can, Colleen, if you can't, the time you have left, I understand. What's the line? That's what I always say to my kids in class. Like, you want me to do this for you, or you want me to give this? What's the line, right? What's the line that says, and I'm not saying this in a confrontational way, what's the line that says, this is an okay one and this is not? So what's that line for you? And she says there are some at the Lizzie Borden house that she will share and some that she won't. So how do you determine, Colleen, the ones that you won't? While you're responding to that, in the show notes, tomorrow I am leaving for Michigan. We're going to be spending the weekend at Michigan State with my daughter and her OM team. I have put the link into these. I'll put them into the show notes. I'll put them into the show notes when we post it, all the good places we post it. There's still time to donate to her Odyssey of the Mind. We made enough to get there. We made enough for the registration, and now it's a matter of kind of getting paid back for the flights to get 7 kids all the way to the other end of the country to play in this thing. And like I've said before, North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts is a Title I school. Title I school means that people there don't have a lot of money. So this has kind of been a good thing and a positive thing, but also a financially difficult thing. So if you can donate, there's still time to do that. So that link is also in there. I have not gotten anything back yet because I think that's kind of an intimidating question. Where do you draw the line? But you can feel free to continue after I get off to post things in this chat room about where you think that line is between what you can share and what you can't. And of course, anytime at all, you can send to our email, spookytripping@gmail.com, the moment that shifted your perspective on the paranormal or any kind of legend that you have whatsoever. I think I've gone over all of our connection stuff. Facebook.com/trippingonlegends. All right, Colleen came through. Wow. Hard to explain in chat, but the one I share now and again is Andrew Borden answering a question about me where he said, good maid. LOL. Not quite sure. Good maid? But it's of a more personal or natural, painful nature. I tend not to share them. So if they're having a direct communication. But then I guess the question is, I know I said it was going to go off, but I want to just respond to that. But then the question is, but they said it to you too, right? Like they don't understand. It's like, wait a minute, this is going to be in a podcast? I didn't clear that. But they at least communicated to you, which means they wanted people to know it, or at least wanted one person to know it. I don't know. It's a difficult place to be. I'm going to get off for tonight. You can feel free to share here. You can share directly with us with all the information that I said for Chris Balzano in the north, for Natalie Crist in the south. Have a wonderful evening, and here's hoping that all your trips are legendary.